So this has been quite a drama, a challenge to the DNC voting process and its guidelines surrounding gender balance for their leadership could lead to the removal of Vice Chairs David Hogg and my next guest, Malcolm Kenyatta. Hogg says that his push to primary, quote, asleep at the wheel Democrats has made him a target of the DNC. Kenyatta says that is not true, and Hogg knows it. DNC Vice Chair and Pennsylvania State Representative Malcolm Kenyatta joins me now. Malcolm, welcome. Thank you for coming today. It's good to see you. So, David Hogg says that it's not a rules thing and all that gender, like you got to pick one person, this gender, woman. He said that's not the problem. The problem is that he came in and said that he wanted to primary a number of older members of the Democrat Party. Do you agree with him?
So let me say this. There is nothing I would rather be talking to you about than the internal parliamentary procedure of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, for that matter. What's important right now is that just last night, in the middle of the night, Republicans advanced out of the Budget Committee a budget that is going to gut Medicare, Medicaid, and give those quote-unquote savings to billionaires. That's what we should be talking about. But we do have to talk about the chaos, and we do have to talk about the chaos
because the leadership is about the future and figuring out where Democrats go. They had a very difficult electoral.
And I'll tell you, Martha, that is what I've been talking about.
Do you agree with David Hogg that they're trying to push him out because of his goal? And Bernie Sanders says, I can relate. I've been there.
Martha,
the party doesn't want you in.
It's not about whether or not. It's not about what Malcolm thinks. It's about what the facts say. And what I have said is this. In laying out the timeline. On February the 28th, Ms. Free filed this challenge before we knew about what David wanted to do with Leaders We Deserve. On March the 25th, Chair Martin laid out the most bold and aggressive reform package we've seen in Democratic Party history, including a pledge that party leaders, just 10 of us out of millions of Democrats, don't try to dictate the outcomes of our elections. And it was not until April 16th that David announced what he wanted to do with Leaders We Deserve. And he has constantly conflated two things that happened well in advance of what he did to make this narrative that doesn't exist. So David doesn't have a debate with me. Let me finish my point. David doesn't have a debate with me. David has a debate with the facts. And the point that I'm making is, as we have this conversation right now, when you ask about the future, I have been out across this country talking about three words that I think crystallize the Democratic Party's mission and our message for the next, 4 years and beyond. Make life better. I think that is our job. That is what I've been focusing on. I'm happy you have. That means it's cutting through.
I have heard you say that.
Good.
But the problem is, let's put up these members. So you've got a bunch of members who are over the age of 75, and this is really his issue. So he's saying you guys are using these, what he sees as somewhat screwy rules, like you got to pick two people of this gender, one person of that gender, to push him out because he wants to force change in the party. But 21 of these people who are over 75 say, let me say something, because I know we have almost no time left. I also believe that we need robust primaries. The question is not whether or not we should have robust primaries. And the Democratic Party, to be clear, is not an incumbent protection racket. So I'm not endorsing any incumbents. This is very simple. I believe that voters should pick our nominees, not party leaders. And if you listen to what David has said, he has highlighted a number of folks who are over the age of 80 who he does not want to primary. So in this moment, it's about party leaders trusting voters. I don't want David Hogg to leave the Democratic Party leadership. I want him to be the leader that we deserve within our party. All right. It's going to be very interesting. And Bernie Sanders says, I feel your pain. I've been there. I went up against the establishment. And, there we have it. Thank you very much, Malcolm. Good to have you here today.
Happy to come
back and talk to us more.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.